Hello and welcome to Electrepreneur Secrets, the Electricians podcast. We're here with you 5 days a week to help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level service, taking it to the top. I'm your host, Clay Newmeyer, feeling great today, Clay Newmeyer, with not so great Joseph, the sales bot Lucani, really trying to hold back as he deals with the stomach bug going around the whole family. Joe, do I even need to ask, how the hell are you, man?
You know what? I'm actually going to give a different spin to it
All right.
because I feel that mentally I'm doing great. I have so much to be grateful for. There's so many things to put a positive silver lining to. Yeah, nothing's staying down. But you know what? I love what I do and I love who I'm doing it for. So I'll say I'm going to do well.
Well, praise to you and your commitment here today, brother, joining us anyway. It was like, Joe, are you sure you want to do this? He's like, hell yeah, we're doing a podcast. So if Joe has to go, we know what happened, guys. I'll do my best to carry the tone. We'll get through this together.
Yep, I'm ready, man. I'm going to power it out.
I feel bad for you, but I'm pumped that you're here with me, brother. And listen, today's no different than any other of the 5 days a week. We got a great little topic for you guys, and I think it's going to really help some people. Here's what it is. It's ultimately appreciating some of the shortcomings that you face out there, appreciating some of what we would call quote unquote losses, appreciating and learning to leverage those losses and understanding this learning curve, the learning cycle. And ultimately, this stuff is hard. That's why we keep saying, and I'll say it again and again, present over perfect. Showing up is half the battle, putting in those efforts. And the reason we want to be present over perfect is actually counterintuitive. It is to make these mistakes. It is to face these problems, because from problems comes growth.
Can I touch on that?
Please do.
I love it because everything you're saying is 100% true. But I want to add another layer to it as well. Because a lot of us feel like the only way to succeed is to succeed. Like every time you got to be winning, but it's unrealistic. It's an unrealistic, unfair example to yourself if you're going to say, I'll never fail. Instead, you should pride the failures as lessons. There's only two outcomes in every situation in life. You're either winning and getting what it is that you want, or you're learning and often finding that what you were chasing for wasn't the thing you wanted in the first place. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, super powerful. And really, when we're winning back-to-back wins, what follows that is this little C word that's actually pretty big in a lot of people's lives and a lot of people's workplace right now. In fact, in safety, it's the number one casualty causing thing. It's complacency, casualty and injury. Forgive me not to go too dark, but the problems that we experience typically come from the times that we fall out of alignment with our process, with our standard operation. With anything that we're intentionally putting forth, it comes from complacency so often. Have you witnessed that, seen that cause problems in the workplace?
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of times it actually happens with salespeople, believe it or not. Can I touch on that if that's okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's a whole series coming on this, by the way, guys, training for the slow season.
Yeah, there really, really is. So the thing is that a salesperson, their ultimate goal ideally is to provide for their families, right? You know that you're going to get a certain amount of salary. I need this much to go for it. But let's say, sake of argument, that person is able to go a little bit above beyond what they need to bring home. Just a little bit, not too much. They need 100,000, they get 120 or something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the complacency actually forces them to go backwards. It forces them to regress, because when you're complacent, you stop following the process. You're like, you know what? I'll just do this part of it. I'll do the 6 options. I do the objection handling and the 6 options. I'm fine. I don't need anything else. But as a result, you start falling off process. And when you're off process, you're going off the fly. And when you do that, you find it's less consistent. So by being complacent, you're actually hurting yourself in the long-term scheme of things.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I'm glad you brought that up, because, and we got Gabriel with us here saying, yes, feeling this right now. Now is the time to revise and improve. We set up training once a week to help improve our new challenges. Absolutely. Here's one of the biggest things. We've said it before, right? If we don't have a process in the first place that we're following consistently, then that means you and your team are leading with their heart. When you lead with your heart, A, we're inconsistent. B, it hurts. The no's hurt. Rejection hurts us personally. And 3, C, and I had this just on a call the other day, in fact, with someone I hope to help with this today. They start to ask this question: am I doing something wrong? Am I actually worth this? What's happening? This isn't working for me. They begin to question everything that they do. And the reality is that was from a stance of not having a process. When you do have a process, and like Joe said, as complacency sets in, especially in high season, guys, if you're listening to this and you're someone who said, I've never had a lead problem before, I've never had a bad customer before, I've never had something go awry before, maybe we're just lucky, but I don't think we need this help. If you're that person, then likely you're yourself in a complacent place where you're not following a process consistently, that high time complacency. And what will happen then, just like Joe said, is you shoot from the hip a bit, you're off track. And so when the problems arise, where do you begin with this stuff? How do you solve that problem? It becomes like everything isn't working. We got to question everything because nothing's consistent enough to actually make a measured analysis of a specific place in the process to start.
I have a great way of describing it. Do you mind if I touch on it?
Please, because I just feel like I threw a mouthful out there and people are like,
no, it definitely, you're dropping some solid nuggets. I like what you're saying. And I want to add to that because for some people, where I'm hearing is I can imagine people saying, well, no, I'm not just training for high season. I'm good. Everything's going smooth. I want to create a visual example of what not having a process looks like to then getting a process and where you can actually shoot yourself in the foot, not understanding how to navigate it. Right. So when you don't have a process, you're winging it all the time. Like that's the standard. There's nothing that you're judging off of. You're just going in and just shooting from the hip. We all know that's not consistent, but some people are very talented and they can create wins out of nothing. They just do, natural talent. But skill will always trump talent because skill you can train on. You can teach people techniques. You can't teach people talent. So the thing is let's say you have this person now who's trying to go in and trying to grow. If you give them a process and high season comes, it's too easy to get deals because people now need it organically. They're like, let's say, okay, sake of argument, selling generators during Hurricane Sandy. It wasn't difficult. I remember a service manager I had at the time called it shooting fish in a barrel because people had no power and they didn't have power for weeks to come. So selling them a generator was easy. But the problem is that actually more salespeople quit the industry after that year because they had the ability of making so much, but then they lost their entire process along the way. And when you're in this example of not having a process after having one, it almost feels like you're in a hole and you are trying to claw at the wall to find your purchase back up. And all you end up doing is adding more dirt on top of yourself.
The hole's getting bigger.
The hole's getting bigger because desperation sinks in. And once things get slow, that's not the time to try to fix your process. I think Arnold Palmer said, if you didn't bring it with you, you're not going to find it here.
Love that.
So imagine spending all high season being an order taker, and then slow season comes and people are giving you genuine objections and you have no idea how to handle them other than saying, sign here.
Yeah, for sure. And just to be ultra clear again, if you're someone that's saying, well, I never get slow season, let's think outside the box a little bit. What is a season? Because I don't just mean as we revolve around the sun and how our position changes and the heat changes and the actual physical seasons that we experience. In this context, it's a bit more of a metaphor. Would you say that the pandemic coming was the end of a season and the beginning of a new one?
There was so much change that happened there. I mean, the fact that even Zoom meetings, we were having to experiment doing remote presentations. I was going into homes wearing full Tyvek suits because customers were dying one a week during the pandemic. It was terrible. So like, what are you going to do? You have to change. And when change comes, you have to remember change is constant, but growth is optional. What are you going to do when change comes? Are you going to roll with it? Or are you going to put your feet in the mud and say, nope, this is the way things have been done all the time. I'm going to keep running the play.
I love that. I love that. All right. To get us back on track just a little bit here. So we've identified that, hey, there's problems in this complacency. There's problems without process. And honestly, that problem becomes really unidentifiable unless we identify the steps of which we're taking to accomplish the goal we have. And I use those general terms because this isn't just sales. It's your business. It's your personal life. It's your relationships. It's everything in life can follow these principles. My mentor taught me something really important because I do, and we've talked about this before, but I've done just like everyone does when you yourself, first person, dealing with first problem. I don't mean first ever. I just mean the big one that's right in front of you, this big rock. We tend to join everything, throw everything on top of it and say, that's what I'm dealing with. I'm having a fight at home. I don't make enough money. We're getting evicted. The lawnmower won't start. The dog ran away, right? Typical country song. And we put it all together and it becomes a song. And that country song doesn't make you feel any better. It lets it out, sure, right? General therapy. But if you want to actually solve problems, we have to start jumping them or putting them all together, lumping them all together, and actually break it down and solve one thing at a time. And this, in my humble opinion, is where mentorship and coaching actually has a massive, massive impact, because we made special mention of this first person to first problem. That in itself is a problem. Being able to step back and see it without your attached emotion is a superpower. And that's where mentorship really begins to shine. And that's why I've had mentors for years and years and years. As long as I've been vertical, I've had someone in my corner to help me identify the problem that we need to solve and help me with the first steps towards it. You had your hand up, Joe. Please jump on in here, brother.
I did. Thank you. I never want to interrupt the flow because I love when your brain starts going. But I wanted to add a little bit of psychological principle to this.
Sure.
Because there's actually something that can be attributed where we're causing our own anxiety and not realizing it. So the thing is that you were mentioning earlier, like, oh, this is the problem. This is the problem. This is the problem. The thing is there is so much that goes on with our bodies that we associate with anxiety that isn't always the case. Like some people get that center of the chest anxiety feeling. Sometimes that's acid reflux. The thing is that when you get that feeling, whatever that feeling is, you first start thinking, oh, this is this problem. And you start to look at it, but you ignore what the actual problem is. Take some Tums, have some omeprazole, get your acid reflux under control, and what you're feeling will go away. The same concept applies to the process here. You could think it's not good leads. You could think the season is slow, but really it's that you're not processing them through the funnel correctly. You're not asking the right questions. You're not creating interest and desire. So what I'm trying to imply here is that sometimes the successes actually benefit more from the failure because it allows you to reframe your focus. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. Perfect circle back to the point of this conversation here today is honestly the quickest path to success. And this is what they call NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, a presupposition. The quickest path to success is going out, taking action, and making mistakes. Because every time we make a mistake, what happens? My 5-year-old had to remind me of this. Micaiah, my oldest, literally, I can still see her in the rear view mirror of my truck. I'm going, damn, I missed the turn. And she goes, that's okay, Dad. Mistakes are how we learn. And my mind just expanded. Like when a 5-year-old kicks some knowledge and reminds you of your true purpose, the calling, the direction, that is profound. Changed my life. And to this day, I'll never forget that, because in kindergarten, that's what they teach us.
And we somehow forget it all these years later because we blind ourselves by thinking that the rules are absolute and that there's nothing that you can do different than the common original path that everyone believes they're supposed to be walking.
Can I call a timeout and actually deep dive on that for 1 second?
As much as you want, man. I'm here for it.
I just lied to you about the second. I don't think there's ever a time I speak where it's less than 10 minutes, but we'll try and make it a minute. Here's the thing. After they teach you that in kindergarten, at least in the school system I attended back then, the rest of it is actually focused on convergent thinking. Convergent. Convergent thinking is when all roads lead to the same answer. It's a black and white, a yes and no. A very definitive, you get a mark or you don't. And that's easy to mark. So it's easy to say where you are in your learning. But entrepreneurship and what we do, troubleshooting as electricians, troubleshooting a sales process, that's all divergent thinking. Meaning there's many potential solutions. We've got to properly identify the problem to decide which of these solutions around us are going to help us the best right now. And that's not easy, right? But again, we were first taught mistakes are how we learn. And then we were taught convergent thinking style marking. Mistakes weren't okay the whole time through school. Anyone ever been on the verge of 49, 50% and had a project due and you're like, okay, this is 10% of my grade. I got to get this. I know I sloughed off this semester. I really got to put some time in this Sunday. I was the captain of this, by the way. 8-hour Sunday from start to end project. Oh man, I did not have my mind, my neurodivergence under control when I was a kid. I was like, last minute, okay, pressure's on. We got to do something here.
Believe it or not, that's okay though. Like, I want everyone in the audience to not think that that's a problem. You're allowed to have that kind of thought process. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of neurodivergents actually have avoidance issues where they say to themselves, deadline mode is a real thing. Like if I put a stopwatch on like, Clay, you've got this many hours to knock my socks off. I know for a fact the pressure would make you do it and you'd be great.
I'd go make lunch first, have a coffee, make a fresh pot. The old one's a little stale. It's been sitting there for a few hours, and then I'd leave it to about 10 minutes left. And then, okay, we got to get this done for Joe. Let's go.
But you'd crack the knuckles out and you'd be putting out nothing but gold in those 10 minutes.
Yeah. A little bit of a joke in there, but yeah.
Yeah. No, but like me, on the other hand, I need prep time for things. So like whenever I was given an assignment, I actually was frustrated because I would do the assignment that first weekend. If it was due August 1st, it was done this week. Yeah. Couldn't help it.
And that shows still, by the way. It's an incredible quality of your teaching and growth.
Well, thank you, man. But the point I'm trying to get to is divergent thinking is a circle. We're trying to get there. Clay goes left and gets to the point. I go right and I get to the point. Some people go straight. Some people launch themselves over. Some people go under. It doesn't matter. The point is you got to where you needed to be, and you wouldn't have realized that was a path if there wasn't failures or hurdles along the way. So recognizing the failure is also a path of knowing you're still alive. You're still pushing. You're still growing. If you can feel the sharpness of those emotions, those will help guide you to where you really want to get.
Absolutely. I want to tie this into all-star player qualities. Your A players. It's what we all want. We know we need a couple of A players in our organization to lead things so that we'll be able to step away one day, right? Here's the big acid test. If I haven't said this before, if I have, here it is again. The acid test for an all-star. How do you know if they're an all-star? They love to be measured. I personally, when I make a mistake, I don't let myself off easy. How about you?
Dude, I still beat myself up for things I did in the 3rd grade. I can't help it.
Exactly. Most entrepreneurs have this same quality. It's likely why you are where you are. If you're a peak salesman for someone else, an entrepreneur, as we call it, you likely have this quality. Just doing okay, satisfactory, an S on the report card was never good enough for you, right? So the mistakes that you made along the way were likely hard as fuck. It likely hurt you and no one needed to say anything to you. In fact, if you were around me after making a mistake and you wanted to come rub it in, I got bad news for you. I'm a bit of an asshole to be around at that point. Is not an easy stage of my neurodivergent acceptance. It's very, very difficult. And so having that quality, guess what those mistakes propel you to do? Either quit, don't suggest this, or completely fix everything about that problem as you perceive it and create a huge win out of this. And that's where this becomes leverage. Does that make sense?
Dude, the closest comparison I can think of is you walk to a room and you have a door and you open it and it's a dirty closet. The A-star player, the all-star, the people who are like, I gotta thrive, they gut the closet and they're like, I'm gonna do it over again. I'm gonna do it right. The standard person shifts things around, gets what they need, and closes the door, even if they push on it, lock it closed. That's the thing. A players look at it and they're like, man, look at the terribleness of this situation, because they're looking at it from the big picture because they know it could be better. The people who are going to be complacent go, it's a dirty closet. All things are like this. It's no different than someone saying, yeah, it's a slow season. Yeah, these leads are rough. They're just tire kickers. They're just looking for prices. It's the same thing. So which one do you want to be?
Yeah. I'm reminded of one of my favorite quotes, and I know I've said this one a few times, but it's a Tony Robbins quote. And he said, we don't live up to our highest vision of ourselves. We fall to our lowest standards of what we'll accept.
Yeah.
And that's routine for humans. That is being a human. Unfortunately, we've got a choice. Some of us choose to hold down the couch. Some of us choose to go out there, present over perfect, and absolutely make mistakes, and then overcompensate for those mistakes and correct the shit out of them and continue this vertical journey forward. It's an incredible quality. And I urge you guys to then accept those mistakes as part of the journey. Embrace it. Know that learning isn't something we can just do in a moment. It's not something that you just, this isn't the Matrix. In some ways, I wish it was. Plug me in right in the back of my head and hit upload. I would love to learn Taekwondo. Take me to the 3rd degree black belt level. Let's do
Matrix.
that. Right? But that's not reality. The reality is actually better than that. Because honestly, if it was just an upload, we'd be right back at complacency, wouldn't we?
I unfortunately agree with you there. I remember thinking when I was a kid, I don't know if you've had similar interests. I remember wishing I could speak every language, understand every religion, understand everything about everyone, because then I could fit in and I could sell to them and help them and all that great stuff. But I realized that if it was as simple as just uploading it, it would never be satisfactory. So yeah, I'm studying all those things now, and whatever I do master will be worth it because it was a road long earned and long walked. And I feel like that's a better journey to walk and a better accomplishment than it would be just pressing one button and gaining instant knowledge.
Absolutely. I think a dangerous place to be is to set expectations to completely learn or develop a process in mere, days, weeks even, and aim for perfection that soon. Our process took you over a decade of trial and error and working on it to get it to where it is today.
Correct.
And that's with other coaches from other trades and you having to decode and recode to electrical. And that's how we know that it's maybe the industry's only available complete front to back written sales process with every detail in it. Not only that, but with the whys we're doing things. It makes sense the whole way through, but to expect to learn it in just 30 days, 40 days, 50 days, right? Not with that much intricate detail. Not to mention, the human mind's only capable of so much. How much of this needs to become muscle memory?
So I'm sure you've experienced this as well, like working with me on a regular basis, but like sometimes you'll hear me using the process in my own day-to-day conversations. That's because it needs to be subconscious. When you do this at a regular level, if I can just stitch something here quick.
Yeah, of course.
So imagine, sake of argument, you have a personality that's one way and a process that operates different than your personality. You're with this customer, you're face to face, you're bonding as you. But then the process comes in and you sound different than when they originally liked you. That would actually make you lose credibility, even if the process was better, because now the customer knows I built a relationship with this guy, but the person selling me is now this other version of himself.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I was so effective at the process was because I adopted it to be me. This was my way of communicating and understanding the world around me. And it worked. So I could approach the door in the pre-arrival steps, already prepped and ready to go, but it was consistent from beginning to end. And because of that, people were like, it was a consistent appeal. And I feel like that's more important than just kind of half-assing it in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve Bone has said role play every day. And I would agree as much as you can, right? Guitar players, you don't become Jimi Hendrix without playing every day. And you've seen the fingers go on some of these guys. If you're a metal fan, hell, I know I am. In fact, I watched a documentary one time was with Dave Grohl and Zach Brown, the country singer. Zach Brown is actually formerly a heavy metal band. And so he actually did a metal solo on a banjo. It was insane. His fingers are all like you could not process what he was doing. You couldn't. It's too fast. Only muscle memory can get you there. And that only comes from experience. Role play. You have to keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. I like to liken this to the first time you ever faced a type of objection. In the moment, you realize what's happening. There's a deer in headlights moment. You're accessing your memories. You're looking for the answer. What is the right thing to say here? But you're also worried about the time, right? That awkward silence feels like a long time. We just talked about this awkwardness and living in that ridiculous for on the last session. But in those moments, you end up rushing. And then at the end, you go, well, I didn't do very well there. A lot of people leave that situation and don't invest that due time and consideration now post sales call, post objection. Another piece of this, right? Now, after you've faced that objection, just because this is easy to understand now, it's actually easy to revisit, even consult with someone and get help on it or look it up on the internet. Whatever you got to do, there are resources to help you with that. And then you can practice that. But if you don't practice that, how are you going to do better on the next time? If you don't prepare, how do you perform better on the next time? You have to experience it and miss before you can ever score.
Yes. Big time. I love that you're dropping the value here, man, because it's so freaking true.
Good. So you know what? I think we're going a bit long here today. Let's try to wrap this up with a couple action items. Now, do you have anything in mind today?
Not off the top of my mind, but I'm pretty sure if you start with the action, I'll come up with an all-star.
Okay. I'll give you guys an action. I'm actually going to share something. And this might seem a little off-centered here, but one of my business mentors, the guy's name is Keith Cunningham. And if you're a serious CE owner, then I actually recommend you look this guy up, Keith Cunningham. He wrote a book called The Road Less Stupid. But he did a podcast once upon a time and he talked about something profound. And what this thing is called thinking time. If you've been following me for a while, you may have heard this before, but thinking time will actually change your life. And how he found out about it was in one of the most extraordinary situations I've ever heard. But he was in a board of directors at a company, big meeting, and they hired a big hotshot consultant to come in. And everyone in the company took turns batting around talking about their perspectives of this big problem they're trying to solve. Finally, they look over the consultant and they say, well, what do you have to say? He'd been quiet and just taking notes the whole time. He said, gentlemen, my next thinking time is scheduled 2 days from now, Thursday at 4:30 a.m. You'll have your answer at 6 a.m. And then he left. That was it. My mentor, Keith, followed him and was like, hang on a minute here. You got nothing to say? Well, I told you when my next thinking time is booked. Yeah, what is this thinking time? I'm not sure I follow. You telling me you're not thinking with us here today? He said, no, that's my strategic, my scheduled thinking time. See, I've been writing down all the notes of the problems you guys are presented. And with that, I've written down a hard question. Now, at this scheduled time, I'm going to answer this hard question. Here's how you do it, guys. Here's how you can use thinking time to your advantage. And you can use it to properly define the problem and get out the collective of all that you already know about solving it. Right? So in this case, if it is a sales process issue, then a hard question might be this, and you just write it at the top of a blank page. How is my sales process letting down our potential customers? That's a hard question. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, sitting there, my first thought was like, I immediately went introspective and was like, oh my God.
So here's the next step. You write down the question top of this page, and then you're going to put a blank bullet point, a dash. There's nothing there yet. You need to already go pee, use the bathroom, have your cup of water. You got nothing else, no distractions. Put in noise canceling headphones if you have, but no music, nothing. You're alone with you now. This is thinking time, guys. It'll change your life if you do it in this way. I want you to start a timer on your phone and then put it aside. You're in sleep mode, or do not distract. For half hour, 45 minutes, whatever time you have available, I want you to fill out an answer in that first bullet point. Every time you answer, you're going to put another bullet point. And what that's going to do is prompt your brain to keep thinking about the next answer. When the beep of the timer goes off, you're done. And what you've now done is take the internal dialogue from everything, like I said, the collective of your experience and knowledge, and you've put it on a page of how to solve this. Can you see how important, how valuable that information would be in that exercise, Joe?
You've blown my mind in a way, because now I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm doing that unintentionally in my morning routines. I have my silence, I have my spirituality times. I have like there's moments where I'm just in silence. And I didn't realize that's what was going on. You're right. My best thoughts do come after that.
And you know what? That may have even been the all-star. It's just what came to mind here today.
I have an all-star action.
Let's hit it.
It
Let's
actually
go.
lines up exactly what you're doing. So the thing I want to lead into is I want to leave something very practical that people can use, right? Whenever you're faced with a problem, you have to identify it as something you can solve in something instead of something that's facing you, right? It is not an opposition to you. It's just something that you have to learn to go around, over, under, or through. For me, I always struggle with the email it over objection, right? I hated it. I hated it all the time because I felt like there was nothing I could do because I was a trade standard objection, similar to, hey, my spouse isn't home, email it over. The all-star action is not accepting that as fact and not saying that this is something you have to experience. Technically, if your customer calls you, they need your service, and you emailing them actually is doing them a disservice. But the only way to actually take it to the all-star level is to actually drill that objection. So you actually set me up perfectly because your format works with this all-star action.
Perfect.
What you would do is you would write on the top of the page, can you email it over? And then in those bullet points, ask, why do you think they're asking this question? Simply just, why do you think they're asking it? And what you'll find is you'll see gaps in your process. They didn't get enough information. Okay. What information are they looking for? They didn't have enough time. Why do they feel like they need more time? Did you feel like you rushed them? They need to get other quotes. What are you looking for that we haven't already provided to you? And you'll start to find the whys they're saying things. And when you answer the why, you're solving the real objection that they have, not just what they're saying. And this logic can be applied to anything that you do.
I love that. That's huge value, guys. And you're right, perfectly aligned with the thinking time, a little thinking time on objection handling, guys. And the last thing, I just got to tag it on there, I was thinking as you were saying, is a little motto that I've used to accelerate the learning curve. And it's learn, do, teach. Learn, do, teach. Learn, do, teach. And I mean, literally, I've used that all the way from apprentice training. In my first year, I got up and taught people about how electrical applied to my industry and what I was working on, the projects we were doing, because I wanted to solidify that theory against my own experience. And having done that, It's absolutely a superpower to learn, do, teach. So, guys, with that, I want to say thank you again for joining us. This has been another great episode of Electrepreneur Secrets, the Electrician podcast, where we come here with you 5 days a week to help you master sales, simplify pricing, and deliver premium level service. We believe in you. So go out there and rise. Cheers to your success.
Take care.